Brian's ready.
We are. I think they're pretty much ready.
Okay, so
here we go. The next round of the kitchen table. There are spaces at the table, and there are no experts here. You're all the experts, just so you know. These people don't know any more than you know. So if you want to come and join the table and join the discussion and have your opportunity to talk to the whole world, because this is being broadcast over the internet, you can. And the next subject that we're discussing is, a few years ago, 2 million people marched in London in protest about the invasion of Iraq, or the impending invasion of Iraq. And it didn't just happen in London, it happened all over the world. And yet these protests were completely ignored by those decision makers who we have elected to represent our best interests. Yeah. Or, well, supposedly we elected, which is a whole other question in itself. So I would like to throw that to the table. What would you like to say about that subject? Jeremy, from Positive TV.
This is it, yes. Not as if I can't get enough of myself on TV. There
just
we are over
time,
there.
Just before you
now
start.
I'm over here.
Jeremy, before you start, I want to request that you all speak up and understand there are people out here that want to hear what you're saying, and they can't hear it unless you project yourself, like I'm projecting myself. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. So I want you to project yourself in the same way as I'm projecting myself now, so that everybody in the room can hear what you're saying, okay?
So that was a fantastic question.
Do we have a minute though, or is it
minute and a half?
I'd like you to keep it to a minute. That's why I put that clock there. I don't want to be fascist about it, but I would like you to regulate yourselves. If you're going on too long, I'll come and touch you on the shoulder like this and stroke you gently until you stop.
Just like to get started. Champing at the bit.
Can you try and stick to the question that's being asked?
There we are. So we had 2 million people marched through the streets of London with a government watching on. And it appears that government ignored everything that that the people had said, and so and I was one of those people marching the streets as well, and I was one of the people who voted for that government, and I feel particularly gutted that they ignored me. But I think when you think about it in the long run, and you look at the other side of things, is that what has actually happened here is that this government is suddenly in a sort of swing balance where nothing is guaranteed for them anymore, and I think that by marching through the streets, it didn't stop us going to war, but it has sent out an incredibly powerful message to that government. And I think that, many other voters in the land as well, I'm sure would like to have been there and couldn't be there, and saw that sort of solidarity moment. And there have been many more solidarity moments like that in the last couple of years. The Wave March and so forth, all these wonderful marches that have been going on. And I think that irrespective of the fact that we may not have swayed them on that particular day, I think that it has started to shake the foundations of government as it stands. And I think that that is what it's all about. It's about being the change. Same old story.
On that subject, we went to the Wave March. You remember the Wave March about the environment? And a lot of people gathered, but I wondered, what difference do you think that made? Do you think that those voices were heard? Do you think governments are doing anything? I mean, we saw Copenhagen, we saw thousands and thousands and thousands of people come to Copenhagen peacefully protesting about the state of the planet. And then we saw a lot of violence from the police, we saw a lot of people taken down. But are these voices ever heard? How can we get these voices, how can we monitor that actually our voices are being heard?
I think I think that the change is being demonstrated right now, and I think that the next vote will show that. I mean, I really believe that we will have a hung parliament, and that in itself will force change, and that wouldn't have come about if the Labour policies had been, loved by everybody. They would just be voted back in on a wave, and I don't think that's going to happen. So I think yes, we are bringing about a change.
I would say that we're being heard. The marches are being heard, it's just that no one's doing anything about it. They're two different things. So you can march till we're blue in the feet or whatever, but if the powers that be have no desire to change the system, they won't. It's as simple as that, no matter what we do, until it gets to a certain point.
Could Brian repeat the question, please?
The question, you want me to repeat? The question is that a few years ago, 2 million people marched in the streets in protest to the impending decision to invade Iraq, and happened all over the world. And yet those protests were completely ignored. Even when all the kids came out of schools protesting about what was happening for their future, that was ignored too. And the powers that make the decisions went ahead and did it anyway. And we all know what disaster has unfolded since then. So the question is, what do we think about that on that subject? And I want to request again, please remember to speak loudly. Yeah?
What's interesting, I've just come back from South America, and in Peru, in Cusco, it's surrounded by natural springs. It's in a valley in the mountains. And the water rights to Peru have been sold to an American utility company. And they decided they wanted to put meters in and charge people for water. They locked down the whole city. Everybody stopped. It was like there was no way. And they had to back down. They had no choice but to back down, because the people were right, that's it. Until you change your mind, we're not going anywhere. And that's happening a lot in South America. And again, it happened in La Paz. I had a friend that was kind of going somewhere via La Paz. They had something that the government was again bringing in because of international pressure. And they locked down the city. They shut all the transport systems. Everybody had to stay at home. All the people couldn't go to work. They blocked all the roads. So people power can work, but the trouble is in this country is that you're only allowed to walk a certain route around London on a pre-specified day with a license. You're not allowed to actually protest without a license. So it's no longer really a protest if you've got to have a license to do it. If you've got to go and ask the person you're protesting against whether or not you're allowed to go and protest against them on a predetermined day, it's no wonder it's falling on deaf ears.
But then we've got to start doing stuff like Chris Veach is doing. You know, the guy who stands there with the megaphone in the middle of London. And I watched a film of his just recently on YouTube where he's standing there and saying, "It's okay, everything's okay, there's nothing wrong." You know, and there is nothing wrong. We do have the power. We just don't realize we've got it. I mean, we talked earlier about people being the power. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Rebecca, somebody over here, saying that we are the power. We are the new superpower, the people. And people like Chris Veach, who was standing, I think, in Canary Wharf or somewhere, and talking through a megaphone, and he was approached by men who were dressed in uniforms somewhat like the police uniform, very akin to it, but not policemen. So basically, they're kind of fake policemen, but there's some sort of security to do with Canary Wharf. And they told Chris Veach that he was not allowed to be there, to do what he was doing. And he's saying, well, what do you mean I'm not allowed to stand here and talk and through a megaphone? Of course I'm allowed, you know? And he carried on, and he ended up hugging some of them and all sorts of things. You've got to go and watch it yourself. But, I mean, these are not the only people. I mean, Chris Veach is one, but I don't know if any of you have been to see John Harris speak on behalf of tpuc.org. I saw him in this very room, actually, not that long ago. But he is an amazing speaker, and he is one of the people who has given me a sense of my own power, a sense of our own sovereignty, a sense of what is actually lawful, not what is legal, but what is actually lawful in this country. So check it out, all of you, all over the world, anybody who's listening right now, tpuc.org. It's the People's United Community. And once you start getting into this stuff and you realise how we've all been so completely hoodwinked at every level, at government level, to do with the banks, to do with money, to do with the legal system, to do with absolutely everything, you will begin to realise how bloody powerful we all are.
I think that's a very excellent reminder, Annalise, because we went out, we marched in the capital city, and there was such a feeling across the whole country that we were so powerful and that we were strong, that we were all connected, that so many people who didn't even go spoke out about it. And I didn't actually know anybody who was for that war, actually, which was so shocking. So I think the 2 million marching, I think there were so many more people behind all of that. It was the tip of the iceberg. And so we went out with that powerful message, and I think really what they did is they sent a message back saying, you're not powerful.
I think also, can I interject? It's just, you know, we went home, didn't we? We went home the next day and got on with our lives.
We got on with our lives.
Rather
and actually,
than go out the next day,
yes.
and the next day, and the next day, and the next day.
And the message, I do remember the message was that if they still go to war, we should lie in the road and stop the traffic the day that they do that. And I don't recall anybody doing that. And I wanted to do it, but I couldn't find anybody else mad enough to do it. But I think, yeah, they sent the message back that we weren't powerful. And I think the reminder is that we are powerful. And if it doesn't work for us to march the streets of the capital, we will have to find something else. And we won't give in. And we need to remember that. We fought the Nazis over 60 years ago. And the message then is we will never give in.
Yes.
I think there's a difference between protesting against a war and protesting against water meters, in the sense that it somehow brings in the sense of not being patriotic if you can't support your government in a war. And I do think there's a big difference between them, and it's much more difficult to get a nation to lie down in the streets whatever against a war than it is against that. But I read recently, which made an impression on me, an observation from an American general, much a war hero and highly regarded, who said that in fact all wars are commercial. And so it's different. And they're commercial, it's the power of the corporation, which is all powerful at the moment, and maybe that's where the crack will come if the corporation ceases ultimately to have the power that they do, but they've actually ruled the world at the moment. And he was saying that, in fact, wars are held for the benefit of the few at the expense of the many, and where the profits are measured in dollars and the losses in lives. And I thought that was a very powerful thing for an American general to say.
I think there's just potentially a new way of protesting as well. I spent a day in New York recently with Peter Joseph of the Zeitgeist movement, sort of an accidental head of a movement, really. He put out a film that sort of told us the problems with war and the truth about money. As an art project, got watched by 100 million people. Suddenly had a lot of people looking at him saying, well, we know what the problems are, where do we go from here? And he's sort of spearheading a movement now, and his thing is about getting information about resource-based economy, about scanning and mapping the earth with what resources are available, how many people are, and really mapping and scanning the planet that we live in and working out what is available to us and how we share the natural resources and things like that. But what he's done with his movement is that he's got these people all over the world, sort of, they call them chapters that are opening up around the world, whereas he's just encouraging people to go out into the streets and talk to each other and to really start understanding, the corporate pound only gets our money because we still buy into it. We know plastic water bottles are no good for the planet, yet we all go and buy them because that's all they provide, and as long as we keep going to buy them, they're always going to be in demand. But I think his idea of going out in the streets and really talking to the people amongst us to say, we've got to stop doing this, we've got to stop giving the corporates our power because we just keep going back. We keep going back to the supermarkets. We know it's wrong. We know it's wrong. We have to, at some point, being the superpower that people do, we have to stop behaving the way we behave so that everything can change.
I was talking to Ben from Transition Towns, one of the founders of Transition Towns, and he postulated the idea, very much like the TPUC idea, is that the simplest way to make the government hear you is not to pay your taxes. And what would result there would be that then the government would take you to, court, take you to prison. It would be a very, very public thing. But the more people that would like to do it, the better. And he said to me quite clearly, I would have no problem in heading up this cause and going to prison if necessary. And I'm sure I could find many, many other people who would do it. And a critical mass, 10, 20,000 people, the prison system certainly couldn't cope with it. And so somebody would have to listen. I think it's a wonderful solution. I think it's time to make a peaceful protest. What could be more peaceful than just quietly not paying your tax?
Well, actually, you can actually close a court down. John Harris, I believe, has done it at least twice. Because in order for you to be, oh gosh, I mean, there's just so much of this stuff that I could talk about. You have to go on this site and look at it all yourself. There's just a mass of information there. But basically, in order for you to be prosecuted, you have to create something called joinder. And up until that point, if you do not create joinder, no one can do anything with you. They can't take you to court, they can't find you guilty, they can't prosecute you, they can't put you in prison, they cannot do anything. So just go home, do the research, learn about how not to create joinder. This is all completely lawful, it's all based in the Magna Carta of 1215, and it's totally lawful by common law. You have to realise lots and lots of things. You have to realise that the police, your local police force, your national police force, is not a police force, it's a corporation. Your local council is a corporation. You will find out that everything that you thought was voted for by yourselves and brought in by your wishes for this country to be policed properly and all the rest of it, they're all businesses. And I was so shocked. That was such a huge thing for me to find out. And it makes such a difference as to the amount of power that you have against a corporation. Because a lot of corporations are in fact in breach. For instance, no, I'm not going to get started on this because I would just go on for hours. But you need to go onto tpuc.org.
Just a quick question for Jeremy. What happens when you get a hung government? What happens?
Oh, interesting. Now I'm political advisor. Hung government, I have absolutely no idea. What essentially
Has it ever happened in the
what
history
then
of
it means is they have to have a certain amount of people to make a government, and that relies upon taking another party in with them, which would naturally, I think, be the Liberal Democrats. And so it would then be that you couldn't follow your entire party line as strictly as you would want to, because it's always going to be coloured by somebody else's views. I think it's not important about how that parliament's actually made up. I think what's important is that the mix is going to change dramatically, and that it will be shaken. And
essentially, we'd still have the puppets. The politicians are just puppets.
Ultimately,
right?
I'd like to have that whole system changed. And don't get me started on La Paz. It's my favourite subject about how to vote governments out entirely. Yeah. And I think we found the way through tpuc.org. So just give them a plug again.
So we're on a 30-minute cycle on this subject, and I'm going to wrap it up, just put my little bit of input in, because I'm not at the table. I think that, on the whole protest psychology, a whole protest conversation, we need to look at the martial art of Aikido. And Aikido is about never moving against anything, but when you're moving against, it kind of divides the total energy. The total energy of the universe, which is what is moving everything, gets divided when we're moving against. And saying no to war is flawed. It's flawed. If you say no, then it creates a reaction. From my point of view, and the Aikido point of view, is we say yes to what we want rather than no to what we don't want. We say yes to peace rather than no to war. And I really think it's really important, if we're really going to pull the energy of the planet together, that we figure out what we're all for. Life, children, peace. What are we all for, rather than all the zillion and trillion gazillion things that we're against? And so we're going to move on to the next subject. Thank you for that. That was a really interesting discussion. A few things here. Hang on, I've got the magic box. Where's the magic box? I've been subverted. Listen, there's a mural on the wall here, which is like an ongoing conversation on the wall, and there's pens and paints,
thanks,
you're invited to come and join the mural if you want to. Anyone can join the table. There's no experts on this table. You're all experts, absolutely, please. It's complete. Anyone, you can join the table if you want to. Yeah, anybody can. And I don't know what the next subject is. Yeah.
That was a rousing debate there around the kitchen table. There's a lot of really interesting things mentioned, and a lot of talk actually about the Lawful Rebellion, sort of the TPUC website. So that's something that you can obviously check out. I think it got mentioned a couple of times, but just again, that's tpuc.org, I think is the website for that. Really talking about how people can actually see some of the loopholes, and it's, the term somebody uses, how we've been hoodwinked. So a way that you can sort of look into beneath the surface really and just see a lot of the things that we think that are the law, that actually when we get involved in the TPUC and look at the Lawful Rebellion side, we can actually see some ways around that. There have been a lot of interesting tweets in on this subject, so I'll try and feed some of those back to you now. Cosmic Tim has been saying, who actually suggested the topic, says, so does this mean that people power is an impotent myth? Well, I think from what we were hearing around the table is that, yes, okay, 2 million people did march, but just because they weren't actually listened to in terms of causing a change at government level, a lot of people heard them, and there was a lot more than 2 million people marched, but there was that plus that were actually behind them and involved in that as well. There was also a lot of talk about getting back to your communities again, and just having a talk with people on the street. Dana from Positive TV was talking about somebody who has people around the country called chapters who really go out and just start talking to the local people and just seeing what the word is on the street, keeping the communication and the conversation going, which is what this event is all about, obviously. So I'm going to pull the next subject out of the box. So I'm going to reach into here and pull out the next topic. So you're going to hear it first. So the next topic is, what are your favourite tips for being happy? So this is quite a shift from the last topics that we've been having. So we're going to feed that back now to Brian. What are your favourite tips for being happy? So if you want to send those in through Twitter, so we're at Kitchen Table TV, so you can send that in via Twitter, or actually on the website. There's quite a lot of action happening on the social stream there on the website, so if you want to actually get involved there, you can give us a chat. We've got lots of interesting things going on there. I'm just going to have another look at the Twitter pages. Let's have a look. So we heard that we've been getting quite a lot of contact with news and pictures, and feeding back to a previous subject, which was where will we be in 10, 20, 30 years' time, given the current state of the Western mind control. Somebody wrote in saying, in 50 years' time, most of us will be caring for someone or being cared for. So that was an interesting response there from them. So feel free to get in touch.